But there's still so much else to talk about that I'm delighted my panel includes Noa Hoffman of The Sun, whose readers seem to be turning, and by Michael Crick, veteran, Manchester-educated pursuer of high-handed politicians and author of a blog on the selection of parliamentary candidates for the next election, whenever it comes. Welcome to you both. So, Noa, first of all, I mentioned earlier on, lots and lots of readership groups from different newspapers seem to be turning to Labour, including yours. But what do you think your readers are going to want to hear from Keir Starmer next week?
So there are a lot of very specific issues. I think a big one for our readers will be more clarity on what Labour's plan is to stop the boats. This is an issue, immigration, that our readers are very interested in. We look at the statistics. They really sort of want to know all the latest updates on where Rwanda is, how that court battle's going. And Keir Starmer's most recent announcement on Stop the Boats to sort of come back cap in hand and beg the EU for a returns agreement didn't particularly go down well. There's some suggestions that it could mean that the UK has to take on a whole load of refugees from the EU, and that's something that I don't think our readers were particularly
keen on.
Yeah, so small boats, also net zero as well. Responding to Rishi Sunak, delaying the ban on petrol and diesel cars, that was very popular with our readers.
Very interesting, because Michael, lots of things went wrong for the Conservatives at their conference, not least the absolute Horlicks of the HS2 decision, blowing every other issue aside day after day after day until the Prime Minister revealed his hand. But it doesn't make things easier for Labour, does it?
Well, it does in a way.
They
were put on the spot they've been put on the spot over the last few weeks on all sorts of issues, and I suppose the best thing not to do is not to respond unless you absolutely have to. It's the famous Ming vase moment, isn't it, for Starmer and his colleagues, walking across a room with a Ming vase, and the more you think about, will I drop it? I better not drop it, the more likely you are to drop it.
It's a very tense time.
And I think that the mood of the Labour Party right now is excited. They think they're coming back to power, and they probably are. Certainly, I think Starmer will be Prime Minister. The one question is whether he'll have a majority or not. But I don't think they're optimistic, but they're not excited by the prospect of power, in the sense that they can think like they did in 97. Right, we'll be doing this and we'll be doing that and we'll be doing all these other exciting things. There aren't a great long list of exciting things that Labour's going to do in office because there's no money. And what Starmer and his colleagues need to do is to come up with the sort of non-expensive version of the smoking proposals that Sunak came up with. But what those are, well, I'll leave that to them.
I think there's going to be a real go at the House of Lords, actually, which I think will be quite popular in the country, given recent
although
events.
actually reforming the House of Lords is almost impossible, as you well know from your...
It's very difficult, certainly. Very difficult. Noa, you were at the Tories, I think, weren't you?
Yes.
So just give me a sort of sense of... You've been to various conferences, how this one felt. Because I'll give you a couple of prejudices and then you can tell me I'm wrong.
Please.
It seems to me that with a few exceptions, this generation of politicians aren't very good at public speaking. And what was going on in the main hall of the conference was much less interesting than what was going on in the fringes.
So, my interpretation of this Tory conference was that it was flat. It was not the disaster that was Liz Truss's Tory conference, where there were literally Tory activists downing glasses of champagne in the Midland Hotel bar, not sure whether to laugh or cry at what's going on around them. It was a step above from that. But it wasn't jubilant. It wasn't excited. It wasn't the conference that I experienced in Manchester 2 years ago when Boris was sort of King Boris and everyone was there to cheer on their leader. It was a lot more muted. It was overshadowed by the drama surrounding HS2 as well.
And was that partly because Rishi Sunak had kept back so many announcements for his own speech, so that he was putting out ministers like Mark Harper with nothing really to say?
No, I think it was more than that. I think it's also these months of really bad polling, sort of a lot of tiredness and a lot of... people don't have that motivation anymore. Or a lot of activists, that's how it seemed when you were in the conference centre. I didn't see that many MPs either, especially compared to the Boris year as well.
That's a very, very good point. Michael, I know you were there too because I saw you there. Yeah. And there weren't many MPs around us, were there?
No, well, I think one of the reasons is it's very expensive to go to these conferences in big cities these days. Getting a B&B or is hard, or a hotel, and it costs about twice as much as it would be if they were still going to Blackpool every year, when you could get I don't know what it would be now, but and so therefore they go for perhaps one day and take their their own colleagues from their own constituency out at lunch or dinner or something, or maybe do a fringe meeting and then go back to London. Ministers, it's a bit different. And the whole nature of the conference has moved really from the hall, which is basically a rally and a non-stop list of cabinet ministers, and it's all on the fringes. And you go to these fringe meetings and a lot of them are packed, and there are queues round the block, and you're allowed to have fringe meetings these days while the conference is going on. That was utterly forbidden when you and I started going to conferences. But I think, what I found depressing was actually this significant move to the right. And it wasn't just in terms of policy terms, but the sort of an unsavoury tone about everything, a sort of a lack of generosity and kindness and compassion and in the way in which certain people were making dog whistle noises, which are going to, be unattractive to black people and gay people and trans people. And I think that is what worried. From the hall. And indeed, so much for the party of free speech. The two heroes really are Suella Braverman and Lee Anderson, and I think they epitomise what I'm talking about.
I agree with your statement. Yes. You asked about the atmosphere. Where all the atmosphere was at Liz Truss's Make Britain Grow Again rally and at Suella's speech, where she really was sort of crowned the Queen of Conference. Where all the excitement and enthusiasm lay in the Midland precinct was with the right of the party and with the policies, whether you like them or not. They were the most inspiring to people at the conference.